once again, a very warm welcome to all of our attendees this morning. To start off, we just want to say thank you very much to IOPSA, the Institute of Plumbing South Africa, for the marvelous work that they are doing, not just in the industry as a whole for plumbing, but also to establish occupational health and safety standards within this very industry. Then also to SIOSH, as well as to PRB for their amazing work that they contribute all the time, and also for accrediting this with CPD points. So if you are a member of SIOSH or PRB, please don't forget to claim your CPD points, 1 credit or 1 CPD point rather from SIOSH, and 0.25 PRB CPD points from them. So if you do not know how to do this, drop us a mail. My email address is there at the top, chris@ohss.co.za, and we will get you that information to assist you in claiming your CPD points. Please don't forget, we are still in COVID-19 pandemic. We know that it's all around us. It's becoming almost a way of life at the moment. But if you need any assistance, obviously the hotline there, 08,000 29999. But also if you need any information on how to cope with the COVID-19 during this current situation, perhaps you need documentation or any sort of advice on what to do moving forward with your company, especially under the level 3 restrictions, just drop us a mail and we'll be sure to try and assist you as best we can. Or if we can direct you to the appropriate resource where you can find that information for yourself. Now, this morning's Toolbox talk, as we see there, today is the 4th of August. We are going to be looking at ceilings as a hazardous environment. Why do we say this? Well, as plumbers, you need to go into ceilings pretty often, especially to go and look at the geysers or the plumbing that is generally inside of these areas. Now, it may not be very often that you are injured or hurt during these times, and that is because you are relatively remaining safe during your working environment inside a ceiling. But there might be a few dangers that we do not see. And these dangers are present at all times, at different areas or different circumstances. And we just want to remind you about some of the risks that we are taking when we are working inside a ceiling. Now, obviously, as soon as your planned work has happened, you might not have already been in the ceiling. So just as a reminder, when you are performing work, for instance, you are actually going to install a geyser in a ceiling, all of this information will affect you. But we don't want you to neglect the safety standards or even your health and safety file when you are just going to go and do an inspection of the client's ceiling. So, for instance, before you quote the client on any work, you just climb up to check on what you need to actually put down as a scope of work. So what we want to then say is, although you're not performing actual works, we also just want to remind you that the dangers that you are going to experience are the same. While performing work, you are exposed to it for a lot longer during the day, as opposed to just an inspection. But even when inspecting, you are still exposed to a degree to those risks. So what are the risks that we are talking about? Well, for one, there's never very good access to ceilings. Majority of the time we are finding that you need to bring your own access, such as a ladder or some scaffolding, whatever type of environment you're in. You might even have to use a mobile elevated working platform, such as a cherry picker or scissors lift. This also means that you're going to be working at heights. So you are going to be climbing inside a ceiling. It's going to be higher than that 1.2 mark, sometimes even higher than 2 meters in some instances. And this now puts you in the risk of falling. You're also going to be working in and around possible electricity cables. You will be inside confined spaces at times. We also look at things like rodents or reptiles, such as snakes, that often live in ceilings. There are times when, especially coming up now from September on, we are going to start increasing in temperature here in South Africa. And as we get through to August, September, October, November time, the temperature is just going to keep rising until we get very, very high temperatures working in those ceilings. Then also sharp objects, perhaps in the roof trusses or ceiling joists. All of these from the underside, from the inside of the house, all looks aesthetically pleasing. But the minute we climb inside of the actual ceiling, we start noting all these protrusions coming through and these sharp objects that could potentially hurt us as well. Then also other services. The location of water pipes and electrical wiring, as we mentioned, these are unknown to you before you actually enter into that ceiling. And so you are not too sure what type of hazard you are going to face. Now remember, whether you're actually working in this environment or just inspecting this environment, you are at risk from those hazards. Now, what about you who are going out to do audits? So someone has installed the geyser, they've done it safely, they've left the work site, now you need to go in and check. Well, isn't that an inspection as well? You are still performing your normal work duties, which means the entire safety file, risk assessment, method statement, safe work procedures affect you as well. You may not be doing physical work, the using of hand tools or power tools on site, but you do need to set up a ladder in order to climb into that ceiling. You do need to physically get up and do an inspection, which is part of your occupation. And thus, it means you are performing work on that site. And if you are performing work on that site, whether theoretically or technically, both instances will require that you perform that job safely. So yes, the exposure levels might be different, but the hazard is there nonetheless. So we really want to mitigate these dangers. We want to make sure that it is not just safe for you, but safe for the next person that comes along. Now, what does it mean to have safe access? Let's take a look firstly at ensuring that you get into the ceiling appropriately. Well, many of you are using ladders. Speaking to about 10 plumbers out there over this past week, we noticed that 8 of you are actually using ladders. One of you weren't actually going into the ceilings yourselves. You were getting a subcontractor to go in there, but they were also using ladders, which meant 90% of those out there were using ladders to access. And then the final one was actually using a little quick stage scaffolding because they found that a lot simpler to set up. Very beautiful design. We thank you very much for sending us all those photos because it really helped us to see what you are exposed to in and around these environments. Now, for those of you who are using ladders, what did it mean? Well, if you take a look at the picture, many of us will need to set up the ladder, stand on the top 2 steps, even right at the top, sometimes even on the piece of the ladder that shouldn't be stepped on, just to access that ceiling. Well, would you say this is safe? Well, no, many of you that I spoke to said this is the only way to climb into a ceiling. Well, in the next picture, we'll see how it is done safely. But when we talk about safe access, we're talking about, first of all, the ladder that is safe to use. So not just any ladder, we want to inspect that ladder and make sure that it is correct for the type of task that we are performing. We also want to allow full access. Full access means that the ladder needs to protrude through the ceiling for at least 900 millimeters. And this will be past the gap entrance or access loft through the ceiling. And then this allows us to be able to have a stable support either when climbing up or descending down a ladder. It also allows for some instances to work hands-free in the situation. Many times when you access into the ceiling, you can then work while on the ladder with that stable support, while standing on the ladder, leaning against it, and then using your hands to perform either an inspection or some specific task. But the ladder itself must be safe, it must be set up safely, and it must also allow for safe access to the working platform. And in this case, it would be inside the ceiling. So let us take a look at how it should be set up. If you take a look at the picture on the left-hand side, you will notice that the ladder is not only tied off, but it is not actually touching any section that could damage the ceiling boards. And this was one of the biggest concerns by most of the plumbers. Now, how do you get this? And I fully agree with you. It's very difficult to know how to set up a ladder prior to actually entering in and checking what it looks like inside. So then many said, well, how are you going to do this? How is it possible that we can set up a ladder correctly without even knowing what's happening inside a ceiling? Well, this is where good preparation and planning comes in. You see, before we even start work, we do what we call a site survey. In other words, if you have an A-frame ladder that doesn't fully enter into that ceiling, it still allows you for your top part of the body to enter the ceiling with a good torch, to be able to look inside the ceiling and see where proper access ladders can be set up. This doesn't mean you've entered the ceiling, you've just done a site inspection of where this ladder is going to be set up correctly, which means you may have 2 ladders, 3 ladders, or different types of access ladders, perhaps a straight or an extension ladder included in your normal working van with your A-frame ladder that you potentially use often as well. But when we set it up to have safe access, it allows the person to climb the ladder and step off then onto a ceiling, not obviously onto the ceiling board, but onto a safe platform while they are in the ceiling, while still maintaining that 3 points of contact. This will then easily allow a person to then climb back onto the ladder and descend past the ceiling boards so that there's no searching or looking for a ladder with your feet. Now, why is this such an important thing? Well, we've noticed many times the ladder is too short for the person performing the work, and oftentimes they need to hold themselves up over the beams of the ceiling and then lower themselves down onto the ladder, normally on the top step, and then slowly descend. Well, this is not very safe. And on a few occasions, we have noticed the ladder slipping out from underneath a person's feet, and the person will then fall down to the ground. Most instances that we've had this, the person wasn't seriously injured, but is that what we're going for? Are we going for minor injuries because it's not that dangerous? Because there have been instances where somebody was seriously injured, broken bones, perhaps even dislocations. Some have damaged tools and equipment. Others have damaged the client's homes and property inside the client's homes, which led to huge costs and also the loss of that job and potentially the name of the contractor going out. So why is this so important? Well, when the ladder is positioned at the correct angle, it is safe, it creates a stable platform. Additional employees can be used at the bottom to hold that ladder. We never carry anything up and down in our hands while we are using that ladder. We use the rope method to lower or lift up any tools that we need to use. Not only does it create a safe working environment, it also allows us to work a lot quicker. Now you might say, well, that's impossible. The way we work is a lot quicker than having to set up a ladder this way. Well, why not try it next time? Do your correct planning, set it up safely, and you will notice that the job not only goes a lot quicker, but you have less touch-ups and dirty fingers and hands all over the ceiling boards from trying to lift yourself in and lower or raise up tools. Oftentimes, setting it up the safest way means that we actually do it a lot quicker. And if you don't believe me, well, give it a try. We have seen many times where using the safe access, it's tried and tested, it does work. So please, can you try and mitigate the danger of not having safe access? As you see there, making sure that the ladder protrudes through the ceiling board at least 900 millimeters, and this will allow you safe access and egress from that ladder. Now, another very big danger that we have is that of poor lighting. When we cannot see what is happening inside a ceiling, it means that we cannot improve it. In other words, if you can't see the danger, well, you cannot protect yourself from it. If you cannot see what you need to do, well, then you cannot perform your work. Now, we're not just talking about no lighting, we're talking about insufficient or improper lighting. In other words, we want to be able to see our working environment. Some torches that we may use will be able to pinpoint a small location that we're working on, but it doesn't give us a broader view of the area or surrounding that we are working in. Now, this is dangerous because then we are only forced to focus on a small area, perhaps a meter by a meter at a time, while performing our works, and we do not see any of the dangers in and around us. Again, a very good site inspection is needed. When you get into that ceiling, perform a good site inspection with the correct proper lighting. If needed, set up a proper light inside of that ceiling so that you are able to see not only the work or the task that you're performing, but also the area around you and perhaps the area around the employees around you. You also want to be able to see your safe means of access and egress out of the ceiling. Sometimes getting from the ceiling opening to where you're going to be walking is a few meters, and you have a few obstacles to overcome. Perhaps it's obstacles such as the actual roof structure itself that you've got to climb through. Well, you want to be able to see this clearly as well, which means maybe additional lighting may need to be set up. Again, if you do not have sufficient lighting when working inside a ceiling, it will cause major injuries. It will also lead to poor installations. If you cannot see what you are doing, well, then you aren't going to do it correctly. So we have noticed many auditors going out there taking photos of installations, just saying, well, this was a poor installation, it failed the audit. Well, why is that? Well, a leading cause is it not done correctly. It is not done with appropriate lighting, and it could also be that the person performing that work is not competent to perform that installation. So there are a few hazards that we are going to experience, especially when climbing into a ceiling. Now, many of you are going to be performing that this week, and each hazard that you face on site not only must be understood, but it must be part of your risk assessment. Now, every hazard has its own risk. It has its own unique risk rating. In other words, if you know that you need to climb into a ceiling, before you even go to site, you generally know that you need safe access and safe egress. In other words, you need to enter into that area and you need to be able to get out of that area. And in many cases, as we mentioned, 90% of the time with a ceiling, we are looking at a safe ladder to perform this work. We also know that in these ceilings, we need adequate lighting. So why not prepare now before getting to site? Ensure we have the correct information now so that when we get to site and perform our site inspection, we already have the tools with us to be able to perform that task safely. Now, there are a few other hazards that we are also going to be exposed to. Dust inside and around that ceiling, limited foot space, these confined entry points, and perhaps even where we can stand and work becomes limited. Well, perhaps you've experienced this not only in the past, but maybe you're experiencing it right now. We'd like to ask you, what have you done in the way of a safe operating procedure or a safe working procedure? It doesn't need to be a documented one. Perhaps it's just a verbal one. You want to drop it down in an email. Tell us what you've experienced. Perhaps you haven't found a solution yet, or perhaps you have found a solution and you'd like to share that with us. The reason why we are asking you for this information is maybe you found a way to do it safer or perhaps easier, or with a tool or piece of equipment that has made it far safer for you and your employees to work. If that is the case, please tell us how you are doing that. We would love to share this information with other plumbers out there in the industry. We know that cost is always a factor, and especially now post-COVID, we are trying to ensure that our work is not only done cost effectively, but at the same time, we do not want to neglect the safety aspect. So whatever risk you are experiencing currently, please let us know about it. Reach out. We do want to know about it. It could potentially save someone else's life as well. So thank you very much for taking your time out. on this Tuesday morning to listen to this Toolbox talk. We are very encouraged when we see so many joining these Tuesday morning Toolbox talks, and also we are very encouraged about the feedback that we are receiving. And we want to say a very big thank you to all of you who attend this on a weekly basis and also give us the feedback. It really helps us to understand what you need out there in the industry. Now, for many of you who are using the email address, we just want to confirm that email address that you can reach us on. That is Chris, CHRIS, @ohss.co.za. Please drop us any information that you might have. You can also use the info account, that is info@ohss.co.za, as well as safety@iopsa.org. And then if you want to get in touch with us, there's the two cell phone numbers, 071-875-2070, as well as 079-262-3198. And we really look forward to being able to assist you. Next week, we are looking forward to hygiene and why this is so important, not only just because of COVID, but the sanitizer that we are using or disinfectants that we are using, what other pathogens or bacteria is it killing that helps to make our environment safer, and what should you be looking for as a plumber in the industry. So thank you once again. We look forward to seeing you all next week. And if you have any questions, please don't forget, use the email or WhatsApp line, or at any time, if you would like to give us a call, we'll be glad to help you out. Thank you once again.